Mega Man. Hello and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm Real Person. And today I want to talk to you about, Mega Man. The first Mega Man for the Nintendo Entertainment System. A few things up front. I guess there's, like always, there is a written review for this that you can check out before, after, or instead of the video review. And I link that in the description. You can go down there and click on that thing if you like. Also, I did want to bring up that this, while it is, a faithful, port of the NES game, it is from the 3DS Mega Man Legacy Collection. So, I mean, if there's any problems with that being a thing, go ahead and let me know, I guess. But that's where we are with that, and I think that's actually probably pretty much all this, except for to say that historically I've been very shitty at Mega Man games and video games in general, yes. But I when I played this one, and I may have looked some stuff up, I may have used some of the exploits, whatever. But I did beat it, and I don't feel bad, and you shouldn't either. You should not look down on me for that, because it was really fucking hard anyways. So these are kind of these weird to me to finally just give a real look at these games after finally starting to beat them in this Mega Man series, and I'm hoping that I can get through all of them. We'll see what happens, I suppose. I think that's everything, though, so let's get to the fucking thing. So, the story in this game isn't really explained anywhere. Maybe it's probably on the box or in the manual or some of that shit. But as far as the actual game itself, it doesn't really tell you anything of what's going on. It just kind of brings you to, like, a boss-like thing. Like, okay. The general plot, as far as I could glean, is that kind of from osmosis of the other games and everything and all that too. And I could just look up what it's supposed to be, but from what I gathered myself, was that basically I think it's like Dr. Light and Dr. Wily both were making these robots to try and better the planet. They're supposed to be used for things like, mining and cutting down trees and forests and stuff, and, construction, that kind of shit. And basically, Dr. Wily went all evil and reprogrammed them, and used them to try and take over the world. And then, Dr. Light reprogrammed Mega Man, who, wanted to stop Dr. Wily anyway, to be a fighting robot, and to try and stop him. So then you play as Mega Man, trying to defeat the master robots and stop Wily with his evil schemes. It's nothing crazy anyway. You don't really need the story there. It doesn't add a whole lot to it, but that's your basic premise for you. There's not really any fanfare with it in this game. And the gameplay is also pretty simple. So you play as Mega Man. You go through these levels. You jump, you shoot. That's pretty much it. You have like 3 of your projectiles on the screen at any given time. With your standard gun, you're trying to destroy enemies on these stages and avoid obstacles. Some of them are instant death traps, but you do have health, because some things will actually hurt you. There are pickups you can get to increase, or I guess to refill your health. There's also pickups to increase your score, and there's some to refill your ammo, because you get weapons by beating these master robots. There are 6 of them, and every time you beat one, you actually get their power, and you still need ammunition to use their power, but you get to use each of those. Once you get through the stage, you find the boss room, fight the boss. That's how it works. And you can also pick whichever order, whichever stage you want to do. You can also pick up extra lives, because if you die, you'll go back to a checkpoint. If you run out of lives, you have to start the entire stage over or pick a different one. And using the weapons that you get from these bosses, some weapons will be very effective against another. Like, basically, one weapon is really good against one of the other bosses, is kind of how it works. They have a weakness. So you can use that as long as you can beat one of the bosses. You can then go on and use that to try and use the Wheel of Weaknesses to try and go through the other bosses. to try and give you a bit of an advantage. There's also one other item, which is that I know about. There was this what is it? Well, I guess it's like a weapon thing. I think it's called a magnet beam, and basically that creates these temporary platforms for you to jump onto. It also has ammo like your other weapons, though. I mean, that's basically it. You go through those stages, and then once you finish those stages, you then, whatever order you want, then you'll have to go through a set of Dr. Wily stages that you must play in order, and once you beat those, you beat the game. That's the whole thing. You know, it's a fun game. It's a simple design, and it works. You just, you know, you just jump around and shoot stuff on these levels, and just some platforming that you have to do, some pretty hardcore platforming, and it's a lot of learning how to do the levels and getting good at doing them repeatedly, as well as figuring out how to tackle these different bosses, you know, what weapons work against them, or, you know, and how they act and react to, you know, situations. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say for that. Like, I think the art's alright, and I think the music's alright. It's kind of catchy. The stages, while they can be kind of brutal, they are relatively short, so they're not, you know, it's not a huge hassle to go back through them if you need to. You know, it's pretty tough, but I think because of the shorter length, it's not too tough to necessarily try to do the stuff. So it doesn't feel too terribly repetitive, unless you're really bad at it. But if you're really bad at it, you probably won't get anywhere either, so I don't know, there's that. And I guess there's just not tons to say. I mean, it's some simple, you know, good stuff. It controls very consistently, and I don't know, I mean, I had a good time with it. But it also doesn't mean that it's perfect, because I think this one, especially for a Mega Man game, has some flaws in it. Some of these things you can let go because, you know, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb when compared to the later Mega Man games, you know, having only 6 Master Robots instead of 8. There is no password system, which I really would have liked, because the game, while it can be short, it is kind of asking a lot to try and complete the whole thing in one sitting. The scoring system seems weird because you can pick up items to get points, and you get points for beating bosses and killing enemies, but, you know, it's not like you get any one-ups, you know, based on your score. It's not like your score saves anywhere either. It's just there for you. It's kind of a vestigial, you know, thing from, like, the arcade era, I guess. And since you can just sit in some places and keep, you know, killing these, like, respawning enemies, you know, to exploit your score just to get higher, you know, it doesn't really mean anything as far as, like, oh, you did this. It could just mean that you played the game for a really long time, I guess. So I guess I found the score thing to be not really like a bad thing, but very a necessary thing, for sure. And while the levels can be kind of brutal, I do think that because they're shorter, that wasn't too bad. The problem is the Robot Masters are fucking unfair, a lot of them. I mean, you can probably get pretty good and learn how to deal with them, but a lot of it is, you know, like, you would have to practice them a lot of times, and even then, you know, there's only so much you can humanly do. A lot of these bosses will kill you in, like, 3 hits, and that's if you have full health, which is ridiculous when you're trying to learn how to fight them. And, you know, that means you'll probably have to replay the stages multiple times just to get to them, to fight them multiple times and try to get them down. Which is why you really have to rely pretty heavily on their weaknesses for a lot of them. At least a few of them were pretty rough, and I had a hell of a time with them, you know, when I wasn't using their weakness. So that was a thing. So the difficulty can be a bit brutal at times, and pretty unforgiving in ways I don't think were based so much on skill as they were on like, you know, endurance and repetitiveness. It kind of felt like padding for some of that, I guess. Like I said, it would be nice if there was a password system. That would be good. I don't know. It's also really glitchy. There's a lot of little glitches that happen here and there. Like I had a weird one where, like, I got hit as I was going into a boss room. And so I actually got knocked back out of the boss room, because usually you're not supposed to be able to go back out of them, but like I got knocked back, and it was like, oh well, now you're like outside. But then the boss music started and the health meter went up, and I was just in the room before it, and I had to go back into the room again. It worked fine, wasn't game breaking, but it was weird. Also, there's a weird glitch where you whenever you pause the game and then unpause it, you kind of shoot back down, like teleport back down from the top of the screen to the point where you were. So if you're on a ladder, you just start falling. That was kind of annoying. But you can exploit the pause and unpause thing while using projectiles, and like you can make it do multiple hits on enemies. It can happen to you if their projectiles are hitting you, and you keep doing this, it'll do extra damage to you. But it is like it's a glitchy like thing you can use to exploit the game a bit. That probably shouldn't have been in there, but then again, if it wasn't, the game would be even more brutal than it is, because sometimes you almost have to do that for how tough some of these guys are. So, I don't know, it's basically a thing of just like, oh, and I guess the one other thing is that, the controls aren't like bad, they're consistent and everything, and I think they work. The only thing is that I feel like you have a weird amount of weight when you're just walking around, as especially compared to, you don't have that same kind of weight and momentum when you're jumping, and I don't know why that is, and it's kind of awkward. So some of the platforming can be kind of tough because of that as well. But, I don't know, a lot of that might just be because I'm not that good, not super familiar with it, and also, like, I don't know, like, just be kind of nitpicky beyond that. Overall, Mega Man is pretty fun, and it's one of those games where if you like the whole 2D side-scrolling platformer shooter thing, especially like for NES classics, and it's Mega Man. He's a pretty iconic character. I think a lot of people may have skipped Mega Man, like the first one, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's the one you should start with, but if you're a Mega Man fan, it's nice to see where Mega Man started, his roots and like what was built on top of this. It's a cool historical piece for fans, and it's a fun game. It's not a bad game. It's just that there have been better Mega Man games even, and so that's the only thing that's like consider that. But it's pretty available. I think it's available on like multiple things. Like obviously I have the Legacy Collection, like I mentioned. It's available on there, and like the Mega Man Anniversary Collection, and there's stuff like in the eShops, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other places you can find it, and probably just, I don't know how much it goes for actual physical copies or anything either, or what other collections it's on, but it's, I don't know, it's good. It's probably worth, I would say, I don't know, maybe $15 or less or something is one I would say, depending on what format you get it in. It's going to vary in price anyway, but just in general for the game itself, I would say somewhere in that ballpark. Doesn't sound too bad. It's fun, it's iconic, it's classic, and it's worth checking out. Unless you really hate the hardcore thing and you think it'll be way too. I mean, it can't be too hard because I did it, but if you think it'll be too hard, or you don't have that much fun with games a little more hardcore like that, you might want to skirt around this one, I guess. But hey, it's neat, and I don't know. Something tells me we haven't seen the last of Dr. Wily. Mega Man.